Welcome back to another episode of the Two Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kubler. And on today's episode, I interview Doug Ellin, the creator, writer, and director of the HBO hit series Entourage, and also the co-host of an amazing new podcast called Victory the Podcast. Now sit back and relax and enjoy this episode of the Two Dates and a Dash podcast. What is up, podcast land? Welcome to another episode of the Two Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kubler. Before I introduce this guy, which if you don't know who Doug Ellin is, you're a fucking moron. He's the director, creator, writer for Entourage, one of the greatest TV shows. And I love the movie too. I'm not necessarily sure everybody loved the movie, but I fucking loved it. Before we introduce him and talk to him, I want to tell everybody where they can hear the podcast. Pretty much everywhere: iHeart, Pandora, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, you name it, you can find it. All I ask is that you hit the download and automatic download and subscribe. That would be great. If you want to learn more about me, want to learn more about my career in law enforcement, the military, want to learn more about my book, A Brother's Love and Memoir, which I wrote, 15 years ago now, which was a tribute to my brother, Andy, who passed away in 1989. He was autistic and stuttered. And it's just about our life story together and how his death affected me and caused me to make some changes in my life that helped get me to where I am today. So if you want to learn more about that, go to mattkubler.com. Now, my man, Doug Ellin, what is up, dude? I'm so happy to have you on.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here day before our mutual birthday. So
yeah, who the fuck would have guessed that?
Yeah. So 53 tomorrow.
50 for me, the big 5-0. When you hit 50, was it like I'm not a date, like birthdays to me are just another day, but did you have like a big 50th birthday celebration? I saw your little shindig yesterday. I saw that.
Yeah, yesterday was bigger. I'm trying to think my 50th. I think I just got divorced, and I was pretty mellow, and I don't remember a big thing. You know, I remember just going, I can't believe it, which I still am in the same place. It doesn't really make sense. And this one's going to be 53. My last real big party was 45, I think.
Yeah, mine was 30, and I ended up getting food poisoning and puking all over myself and being showered by, and we're going to talk about this, but showered by my guys. Literally, my wife's like, get him the fuck out of here. And they bathed me. Like, that's the second time in my life I've been bathed. My bachelor party and my 30th birthday. I was bathed by other men. And so, yeah.
I got roasted by Jeff Ross, so that was pretty humiliating. But it was
that's epic right there.
That was a good party, though. 45, yeah.
All right, so I know that we're just meeting each other. And for everybody, Colin Thompson, who's a good buddy of mine, plays for the Panthers, Carolina Panthers. He had Doug on his podcast, and this is funny. So Colin, I've known Colin since he was a senior in high school, and I'm old enough to be his father, clearly. And I saw that you were on his podcast. I said, you're like podcast episode 4. Like, how the fuck did you get Doug Ellin on your podcast? He goes, Instagram message. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. I'm like, all right, I'll try it. So that's how we got on. So thank you, Colin, for that tip. But I ask everybody the same question. And it's, as a cop, when I'm interviewing a suspect or interviewing a victim, I want to find out where their brain's at as a baseline. So I ask them a broad question that requires them to sort of be creative in how they answer it. And sometimes you can tell whether or not they're full of shit or whether or not they're telling the truth. So I always ask a broad question in my interviews. And
where was I last night at 8:00?
I ask, like, so where were you born and raised? Tell me about your life growing up. And that's a big topic, right? So they got where do they start? Where do they narrow in? Where do they focus in on? So I ask the same question, everybody. Who is Doug Ellin?
Well, creatively now I got a lot of pressure on the answer to this question, but I think as everyone who knows me since the day, I was born, there's not been much change for me. I'm pretty much what I am. And I'm a homebody, family guy. And even though I did this show that was like the big, guys partying show, that's never really been my life. So I'm, I like to hang out with my dogs, my kid, my girlfriend. And I don't know what much more there is. I'm a pretty down the center if we're talking, because we're talking, since you're a cop, I've got an ex-father-in-law who's a cop. I've got a son who wants to be a cop, and I'm a big supporter of police, while also a very big supporter of social justice. So, I somewhere in there is me.
Well, I have to get, there's some things I'm super one way and super the other, and it it never fails when you're on one side extreme or the other side extreme. It's going to create friction. So being in the middle is kind of like the place where you can play. I don't want to say both sides, but it gives you a little bit of flexibility on how you want to spend your time having conversations because you're not necessarily overly one versus the other.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say I'm in the middle because it sounds like then you don't take any stance on anything. But on my Instagram, I like to feel good because I get in fights with both sides. The left and the right screams at me about different shit. So I think I'm just pretty reasonable. Everybody should be treated decently. Every cop should be respected, and all criminals should go to jail, and all bad cops should go to jail. So, I mean, it's kind of, in that realm, but also it kind of goes across the political spectrum in the same thing. And, we see it, I can't sit here and say I'm Democrat or Republican. They all lie constantly. And it's a tragedy is what it is. And I don't know how it's going to change. And with the internet the way it is now, it just seems to be getting much worse. So.
Yeah, it's a shit show, and for the record, I'm as hard on cops as I am on criminals, as far as their judgment, and more so on the management leadership side, administrative side, because of hiring practices. And when you hire people that had a chance to be an accountant, an insurance salesman, a car dealer, or a fucking cop, that's not a good person to hire, because I've known I wanted to be a cop since I was 6. My mom dated a cop when I was 6 years old, and I sat in his car and I put his hat on, and I have a picture of that still. It sits in my office. I'm like, that's always who I wanted to be. And it's more of a calling. It's almost like the ministry. It's like it's one of those jobs that you have to really have a passion for, because it doesn't allow for you to have bad days, right? Your bad days affect other people's days, and sometimes permanently. And you don't want to ever have a lack of passion or a lack of focus or a lack of effort be the reason someone else.
Well, that's my son who played Ari's son on Entourage, who's hilariously funny, and it's been firefighter, police officer since he was a kid. He's in college now, and it's still like his passion. And I'm not gonna lie, I hate it. I mean, I think that cops are so underappreciated, so under the microscope. Then again, that doesn't excuse any bad behavior, but. I mean, I know I grew up in a town with some pretty tough people, and I know the fear I had from some of them when they were after me, and they weren't going to shoot me. So it's a very, very difficult job. So I have to, what the media has done to just absolutely eviscerate them has been horrifying to me, and then they try to build them up when a cop dies like they're the greatest people in the world, and they don't know who that cop is any better than they knew who the one who did whatever he did. And again, we're not even speaking about the George Floyd thing. Again, I'm not a cop. That guy, to me, should be in jail for the rest of his life. I don't care what toxicology reports say. I don't care what anything. I think any reasonable person could assume when someone's telling you they can't breathe that they may die. And whether he was on drugs or not is irrelevant to me.
Yep.
But still, it's a job that I just don't see a great future in, because people don't respect it. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how it turns, because there used to be a time in my life, where people did respect cops, and you did feel like, okay, they weren't just a bunch of assholes trying to be power hungry. And again, I don't want to get in trouble for this. I know I'm not black. I know I don't deal with stuff that a lot of people are doing with, but either way, I wish everyone would go, you know what? The most important thing for everybody is to get home tonight, and then I'll deal with whether the guy has a bad attitude or he pulled me over for the wrong reason or anything like that, which we all have dealt with on some level. I have, as I said, my ex-father-in-law is a cop, and my son wants to be a cop, but I've dealt with some real asshole cops that have talked to me in ways that, that gets me upset. And I've probably mouthed off more than I should have. And fortunately didn't bear any repercussions of that. But I have learned and have tried to tell my children, if God forbid you have any incident with a cop, you just be respectful, period. That's it. Don't try to debate what's wrong with him or anything. Just get home and deal with it later. So, but anyway, it's tough times.
Well, I'm one of the few cops that's actually been arrested in 3 different countries.
What does that mean? Why?
I've literally been arrested in 3 different countries.
Why?
When I was in the Army, I was arrested in Mexico for deciding to jump off of a bar and trying to swing on a chandelier to land on a table, and the chandelier gave way, and I landed in the middle of the bar floor, and then tried to run. Literally, I was from here. It was like a football field to the border. And when you're banged up on, they serve these frozen strawberry margaritas, and I was doing shots of tequila and everything. And we called them big red motherfuckers. I was about four big red motherfuckers deep, and didn't make it to the border and spent a night in jail. And then this is when I was in the Army. And then I got arrested 3 days before I was supposed to get out of the Army for 2 counts of aggravated assault, which I didn't do. And then luckily that worked itself out. And then when I was in high school, I got arrested. So like, I'm not, and that's where I think I come from a completely different perspective, in that I've been on the other side of the fence. So I can respect and understand the mindset and the poor decision-making and all those things that go into getting yourself jammed up with the law. Then also understand that nothing should be terminal unless you are taking somebody's life. Like there's got to be you have to be able to work the problem in a way that allows for like you said, everyone to go home that night, or at least everyone to go somewhere safely that night.
Right.
And that's just a perspective thing. And I think that not every cop has the same upbringing. I grew up in a single parent home and project. So different world growing up than somebody who grew up in the suburbs now working in an inner city. So it's just, the world is different in the lens of which you're looking at it. A lot of it comes from your perspective and how you lived your life and the experiences you've had.
Yeah, for sure. But I hope it gets better. And I just hope, to me, the media on both sides just incites everything all day and all night. And it's frustrating. And
that's why shows like the Entourage help break up that monotony, right? That's why having something that you can lose yourself in, that allows you to sort of like detach from the world and just get lost for an hour or binge watch like I do with everything.
And I had that, by the way. I had, my ex-father-in-law, Officer Hecht, was on the show, pulled them over when they were smoking a joint or something. They dropped his name. So, but anyway, and I'm a big fan of the law enforcement guys that I know out here. So.
Well, I love it. If your son ever needs a connection at LAPD, one of my best friends is a captain there.
Thank you.
So I can make
I'm not going to take you up on that, but thank you.
I know that. But if it ends up going down that road, you want to go with somewhere place where somebody.
I'm actually going to call you for the favor to put him through something that gets him to quit.
I'll have an in-depth conversation if you want with him, and we will go deep into the weeds.
I would love that. Thank you.
So, man, I'm dying to know because first of all, the concept of Entourage and the way that the show was scripted, with having a guy that makes it big and then his boys that are just with him all the time. I live by a code that you have to have 5 people in your life that you will have no problem calling to bury a body for you, and they'll ask no questions. Like, I call it my 5, and I always ask people who's in your 5. And if you don't know who's in your 5, you better figure it the fuck out, because you never know when your 5 is going to be called upon. And if you don't have that group of people that you trust implicitly, and I always tell people my 5 is, I have a felon. I have people in my 5 that are not necessarily who somebody would have thought I would pick, knowing my career and my background in law enforcement and military. I have a very wide array of close friends that I don't, simply because I'm a cop doesn't mean that I don't love my friend who maybe made a couple bad choices along the way. So when you came up with the idea, I know it's based loosely, if I'm correct, off Mark Wahlberg's growing up.
Yeah, not really his growing up, but Mark brought it to me just to do a show about him and his friends in Hollywood. There was really nothing
about growing up.
I mean, I looked at what Mark's crew was, but ultimately, I had to decide to make them kind of the guys that I grew up with, which is guys that I grew up with. I still have a text message chain that's 17 people I know since I'm 5 or 6 years old that are still my better friends than anybody I've met since. So the show was Mark's career trajectory and some elements of some of his real life friends, but really kind of the relationships of my life.
That's a unique thing that I didn't know, because there was always this belief that it was just this whole Mark Wahlberg, take my life and insert it into a fiction.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's impossible to write from that perspective to me, I mean, to me, I had to get inside of it. Mark was great enough to go, okay, the first thing I did, and as being from Philly, is like New York and Philly and Boston are totally different. While we're all kind of working class towns, there's just a big difference and big rivalries and big terminologies that people say differently. So Mark was great, and that was the first step to helping me find it, so I could put it in my voice while still hopefully, using some of the great experiences of Mark's career, and some of his friends. I mean, Mark has a real Johnny drama, and definitely elements of Johnny drama on the show are from his Johnny drama, who's awesome. But I took a lot from my childhood friend in that real personality and all of those elements. And Ari, especially, there's a real Ari. But my son played Ari's son, and his wife was based on my wife. Her name was Melissa, and so I used a lot of the elements of my life to put them into these things.
How does and I don't have that luxury of having the ability to create and then have it be seen by a bazillion people. But
Yeah.
when you created these characters, and whoever the person was that was the inspiration for Johnny Drama or Turtle or E or whoever, were you able to write it in a way that it was flattering and something that they would be proud of? Or did you ever find yourself in a pickle where you're like, yeah,
I never thought of them. I mean, I think all of Mark's real people feel good about the show, and Mark feels good about the show. But the real Johnny Drama actually read for Johnny Drama. But that being said, once the show started, they were my characters, and I never thought about what any of the real people would ever think about it, except for Mark, because he was the producer. You can't write like that. It would be impossible. But that being said, I loved the characters. So I was never writing them in my mind to look bad or to be unflattering. And even though obviously, in 2021 lens, the world of some of the vulgar dialogue is not appreciated the way maybe it was 10 years ago. To me, none of these guys any of their actions were ever anything but loyal, respectful guys that I would want to be my friends and family,
and I think that's the attractive component to it. I think that's the thing that makes a guy like me, who I have a small network of people. I do a lot of human behavior and personality. That's my background in understanding that. And so I understand what my inauthentic self is. My inauthentic self can go into a room and dominate for 2 hours as if I was the most social motherfucker on the planet. But if you put me there for 3 hours, I end up tanking because I just don't have that natural ability to do that. My natural instinct is to have a small circle and keep that circle small, and have people that are in my life at moments for the moment that they're supposed to be in my life for, and the value within that moment. But I don't allow them to have inner circle access simply because of my life and the things that I've done in my life. And it's unsafe for me in my emotional state to do that. So I think what I loved the most about the show is that it seemed to be almost identical to the way I would have lived my life if I was Vince, right? If I was Vinny, I would be that. That would be the way that I would have things come in, but it was never anybody truly ever that got into the squad, right? And I think that's the coolest part, and why I related so much to the show. And I never had HBO in my life, so I would always get it on like hacked internet,
right?
So I would find out like when they would shut that down, I'm like, fuck, what am I gonna do now? I can't watch fucking Entourage. So
well, you can see now, I'm doing Victory the podcast, and
I love it, dude.
Thank you. And I'm doing it with Kevin Dillon and Kevin Conley, and then the rest of the cast members come on. But you can see even, when we were casting the show, I was looking for specific guys that would have been those guys to me. And I didn't know any of them before, but you can hear it on the podcast now. We instantaneously pretty much all became that kind of crew. And, that's what I think people are responding to with the podcast and the show. They feel like it is their guys. And, the good thing with the podcast is, we still curse a little bit, but we don't need to curse. And, you can clearly see that these aren't these misogynistic guys and blah, 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 that they're actually just good friends who like to have fun. And really, I'm kind of in the same way like you. I was never that big party guy. I was never a big crowd guy. So, I think a lot of those elements though, they come from those same things, the town I grew up in, which was, a very, middle class town, but right on the border of not. And my next door neighbor on one side was Dr. Katz, the Jewish dentist, and on the other side was John Gotti's heroin dealer, whose son we were all terrified of, who's no longer with us, but was, there was kind of the Goodfellas mentality, and then the little sheltered mentality as well, which is which is an interesting way to grow up, and has definitely carried me through everything I write and kind of everything I've done since.
So how did you get, and I'm assuming you're from the East Coast originally.
I was born in Brooklyn. I grew up on Long Island. Yeah.
So how did you get, and everybody's got their story. So I'm good friends with, and I don't know if you know Aaron Scotty or not. He was one of the producers for Peanut Butter Falcon, the movie Peanut Butter Falcon. Anyways, he's a good friend of mine, and he's the only real Hollywood guy I know that was ever in Hollywood. And I know he's from where I'm from, so he's a local boy. I know his story on how he went out to California. How did you find yourself going from New York to California and getting involved in Hollywood? Because there's always the dream, right? I want to be an actor. I want to be a porn star, whatever the fuck your dream is.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because like my childhood was kind of, an ADD student with strict parents who education was very important to. And I just loved TV and movies and comedy, but I never really did anything about it. And I went to college and was kind of just going through the grind at Tulane, and I was going to go to law school. And about a week before college ended, a friend of mine signed me up for an amateur stand-up comedy night. And I did it. And I'm not going to say I was hooked on stand-up comedy, but I was like, I can't go to law school. And I moved to LA. I told my parents I wasn't going to law school, which was, and I was going to go be a stand-up comic in Los Angeles, which really.
Might as well said you're going to be a heroin addict. Really? That's what you're going to do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I might as well told my parents that, because it might as well have been the same thing. So they were kind of shocked and didn't even know where this was coming from, claimed, like that they never saw anything in me that said I would want to do this stuff. So I went to LA. I really didn't know anybody except for my ex-wife who I'd met on the phone. And I went out to LA and I just started doing amateur stand-up nights. Then I got a job at a temp agency, got me a job at New Line Cinema. And I did stand-up to raise money for a short film while I was at New Line, and got everyone who worked there in to kind of give me some money and stuff. I made this short film and I ended up selling it to Showtime. And then I got into the American Film Institute, and that really led to everything that I've done since. And then I stopped doing stand-up because, as we just said earlier, I don't like being out in clubs. I don't like people. And I just wasn't equipped to be like sitting around at 2 a.m. with 15 other comics vying for who was going to talk over each other,
It's funny. The comedy, I don't know. A friend of mine runs a comedy club here where I live, and pretty big. He gets a lot of the big names, Tim Dillon, a lot of guys that are, Dice was just out. It's called Soul Joel's Comedy Club.
Right.
Joel Richardson, his name is, local guy, but super connected in comedy. And I've been there and seen some shows. And but when I was an air marshal after 9/11, so I got hired right after 9/11 during that big ramp up, and I was flying from Philly to Vegas, and I just got done doing a bodyguarding gig that weekend, and had to be up early in the morning, flying out on early morning to Vegas, and I'm sitting next to Louis Anderson, and smelly, hugest man in the world. Like, it was not a very enjoyable flight at 6 a.m. because I think he was out all night and showed up at he had smelled the booze and I think bacon, and so we became friends on the flight.
Right.
And for about a year, I had standing will call tickets to his show in Vegas.
That's nice.
And I would bring, every time we went to Vegas, I'd bring whoever my partners were. I'm like, listen, we're good for tonight. I'm going to take you to go see Louis Anderson's show. And it was my only, and then we would go to his room afterwards to hang out. And but that was like my only foray into the comedy world.
Yeah.
And it seems almost like I felt like he was lonely. Like, it seems like, because you give everything you have on stage, and then what else do you have to give afterwards to anybody who was just there? Like, what is your?
I mean, I can't speak to obviously anybody else. To me, and I didn't do it long enough, but again, I'm not not a social enough person to be that guy in that situation. I would have enjoyed being like Louis, a real successful comedian, doing that, I think. But I don't know. I mean, there's definitely people say it's kind of cliched that comedy comes out of darkness and pain, but I don't know. There's guys like Seinfeld who I don't know him personally, but he seems like the happiest guy in the world. So some of it I think is in everything. I mean, look, we know with police officers, it's the highest suicide rate, I think, of any job in the country. But I know a lot of comedians who've committed suicide, from Robin Williams to others, et cetera. So, I think all walks of life have different things, but it's a difficult lifestyle. And, even the moments on stage, which they're a rush. And, the times I did them when things went well, it's a real rush, and you come off and it's, kind of, I'm guessing when you get to Dice's level, who you mentioned earlier, like coming out of the stadium when 50,000 people,
Right.
which Dice was doing, are yelling for you, and then you walk out to normal life, has got to be a strange experience, like an athlete. I think sometimes there's some of those athletes that have a hard time making that transition.
It's I mentored a lot of kids in my career, and I had kind of a business doing it. And one of my kids I mentored for about 15 years. She's now a licensed therapist, I guess is the title, but she has a business. She was a Division I athlete, and her and her husband was a quarterback at Delaware, and they have a company doing transition for athletes, like
Right.
helping them work through the inevitable what now. And I think that's for any, like, even in cops, cops rarely ever leave, the framework of what law, carrying a gun, wearing a uniform, whatever. They always transition to like security, or,
Right.
there's never like I'm not, like, when I'm done, I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. So I'm transitioning into podcasting and more entrepreneur stuff. So
Right.
I have always had an out, but most cops don't. Most cops have get my pension. No, I still got to keep working a little bit because it's not enough to live on. And they end up doing the easiest thing they know how to do, which is second nature, which is to put on a uniform and go stand a post somewhere.
Right.
And I think that's just, I can only imagine, and you see actors or whatever, and they're doing like shit movies, and there's, I don't know if it's because they need the money and they didn't invest well, or didn't manage their money well, or they can't let go. But there's always that component in every high stress, high visibility job.
Yeah.
Profession. I think that's always going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, it's tough. It's tough to come down off the high, whatever it is. And it's tough to, as we get older, it's tough to see whether you're, I've had my highs and lows, which is also one of the things I had to put in Entourage. Mark really didn't. I mean, Mark's career, it's really never been bad. He's one of the few people that I know. And that was one of my first problems when I started approaching how I was going to do the show, which, look, some people think things went too well for the guys anyway. I can't stand that comment, but because I wanted it to be a fun wish fulfillment show, but you still need obstacles of some kind, whether they're, Vince loses a movie to
Medellin,
or loses a movie to Leo, or
right.
The movie opens and doesn't work. But Mark had such great success from such an early age that it was tough to find those obstacles. So a lot of them I used my own, because I've had the complete ups and downs over and over and over,
It's funny how you lose perspective sometimes when you hear Hollywood and you think of Mark Wahlberg or any famous person for that matter, and just assume, well, they got the fucking life. How can they be pissed off about whatever? How can they build up? But I mean, there's a journey to everybody, right? Everybody's got a journey to get wherever the fuck they're at. There's a steps that we're taking, and it's all connected. There's no, I started here, fuck all this stuff in the middle, and here I am, and I'm just going to forget that. The journey is what got you there, and that's for the people that I think that stay humble. And I think Mark, from what I can tell, he seems like a pretty humble guy that, he's rooted in his faith. He's a good family guy. It appears, and all this is all from optics, from whatever the media lets you see. But I think the people that have that, and maybe it's because he's got a fucking 5, right? that check him and say, listen, motherfucker,
Mark's a great guy, but I think that, the thing that the society is starting to come to understand now is mental health is mental health. And you can have $1 billion be a movie star, have a beautiful, and this has nothing to do with Mark, and have a beautiful wife and children, and still not be a happy person. And there's a lot of the world, that will not appreciate that. Who gives a shit? You're not poor, you're not this, you're not that. So it's tough for people who have success to kind of explain to anyone what they deal with. And that's not to say that what they deal with is anything close to, oh, I'm a police officer in Philly, where every day I'm getting in battles with people and I'm scared for my life. Still, that being said, your life is your life. And when you don't find whatever it is, like for me, I know writing has never been a thing. It is what I do. It's never been a thing that I love, like I actually have found a lot more joy in the podcast I'm doing than writing screenplays, because it's a very taxing kind of setting yourself up for amazing rejection. You work on a script for 6 months and you have some asshole tell you like, it's not funny. Like, yeah, that's not the worst problem in the world. But when you fucking realize that you spent 6 months of your brain power and people are telling you it sucks, it's not a comforting thought. And when you realize, okay, I'm not going to get paid for that. And whatever your life is, you have a beautiful house. It's not that you need more, but everybody wants to be respected, loved. They want to feel like they serve a purpose to the universe. And, I think that's, that's a lot of it. Again, it's not to compare it to anything that, a police officer, a soldier, or someone who's desperately trying to feed their family goes through with. But also sometimes, especially people who've made it, have a lot of time on their hands, and they can't figure out how to make their purpose and find a way to make a difference, And I think the times now, they are frustrating, because even if you're a liberal who wants to make a difference in the world, most people go, well, do something, shut the fuck up and stop doing it. And it's like, okay, what do? Do you join the army? Do you become a police officer? So, I think more and more, though, people are starting to understand, and I'm sure in the police force, mental health, like the mafia, is not something that people were, eagerly awaiting to talk about. But I'm guessing you have friends who, or at least know people who killed themselves, since it is so prevalent in that job. But it really is. There's a lot of Hollywood writers and actors. There's a Soleil Moon Frye who played Punky Brewster documentary on Hulu now. I know a bunch of those people in that doc, and they killed themselves. And these were good-looking people who had bright futures ahead of them. And mental health is what it is. So.
Yeah, and I think we discount the journey that we've taken, like how you grew up and the things that you were exposed to and the way you were parented, and like all those factors, it's all part of the puzzle. Yeah. And I think when you have pieces missing, and then the amount of pressure that is placed on someone in whatever profession they're in, and if they don't have that one piece, that might be the one piece that unravels the entire spool.
Yep.
And sends it out of control. And you never know what that is. And I think that's the beauty and also the difficultness of mental health, is that you just don't know which string you pull is going to be the one that undoes the whole thing.
Yep.
And I think people need to be a little bit more cognizant of that and empathetic to the fact that just because you're rich and famous doesn't mean you don't have a piece of that puzzle that would have equipped you to handle all of that isn't missing. And that might be the one time something may happen that just triggers that one string to just unravel everything.
Yeah. During COVID, I know 3 people, and they're all wealthy, all killed themselves during the last 18 months. And, again, you could dismiss it because they had everything and nobody feels bad for them, or you could really go, what people go through in their own head is their own struggle, and money is not the answer. We all know, like, finding good relationships and being physically healthy, but mental health is the same thing. And I think it's hard for people to recognize that, but
I agree. So the podcast, now I'm going to be completely honest, outside of hosting 106 episodes now and being a guest on a bunch of podcasts in the last 3 years, prior to that, I never listened to a podcast. I never listened to a podcast before I was a guest on a podcast. For a long time, I was working 110 hours a week. I ran a gym franchise business that we started and developed, and we had a fitness manufacturing component to it. And I trained people with neurological, neuromuscular stuff, which is what I was doing before we started this podcast. I had a bunch of things going on, so I just never really thought that it was something I needed to pay attention to of all the other time that I have with wife and kids and whatever. But I can tell you that podcasting is one of the greatest gifts that has ever happened to me. Because I'm not the most social guy, because I'm not going to ever have a chance to be in a circle more than likely where Doug Ellin is at and have a chance to have a conversation with you. Like this gives me that exciting, access.
Trust me.
But it's just that opportunity doesn't exist simply because I know.
I know. I mean, to be honest with you, I feel the same way. This people have asked me to do a radio show for like 30 years. People told me, they didn't offer me radio shows. People told me I should do a radio show. Actually, we're going to have Jeff Garland from Curb Your Enthusiasm and the Goldbergs on. And when he was on Entourage, he's like, you and I should do a radio show. This is before podcast. And I was like, why? And he, and I know why for him, he's funny as shit. But I was like, why, and I ignored it. And then this came up, this Victory, the podcast, which Kevin Connolly asked me to do. And I was like, I don't even like I used to hear the sound of my voice on an answering machine and be like, oh God, I fucking can't stand how I sound. And now, not that I love how I sound, but now exactly what you say, I've found like something that I actually love as much as I loved sports. Like that's what I wanted to do. And just to be clear, I never had a possibility of doing that as a monetary income, but that's what I wanted to do, or being a musician. I did not want to write screenplays in a house by myself. This room I can walk 10 miles in a day in this room, which is not very big sometimes when I'm just thinking about what I'm doing. So the podcasting, which I try to tell everybody who's creative in any endeavor, it is an amazing gift that has come to everybody, that you can go out and get your point of view. Even with your best friends, sometimes you can't get your point of view because they won't shut the fuck up. Yeah. But when that microphone gets in front of you, you get a little audience that'll listen to you. And if they find it interesting, maybe you bounce back with them. But it's been like a game changer for me during COVID, when at a time before it, I have another show. Maybe it's going, maybe it's not. I got another script I'm grinding on and stuff, but it's not making me happy. This thing we started with, which, our first episode, I don't know what the numbers were like. We did very few downloads, few hundred downloads, a couple of thousand tops maybe, but it wasn't about that. It was just like, I was just really enjoying it. It didn't cost any money. And so I think it's something that everybody it's good for any business, whatever you're in, just to be kind of able to go speak on something so that's it.
Well, I love the fact that, like, I'll give you an example. So I bodyguarded for a lot of famous people, but it's not like we're friends, right? It's not like we're hanging out and partying at each other's houses. But yeah, I had some Vince Papale, who played for the Eagles in the 1970s, and Mark played him in Invincible.
Right.
Great friend. I've been friends with Vince for 25 years. So he was like my third guest or whatever it was. And then Mickey Ward's my favorite boxer of all time. And then Mark played him in The Fighter. So I interviewed Mickey Ward. And that was like, I was like a kid in a candy store, like hearing him talk about the fight against Arturo Gatti, all three of them. And there's one spot where in the second fight in Gotti Ward 2, when I was like the 6th round, he got hit behind the ear. And the way Mickey says it with that Boston accent, he goes, Matt, I'm telling you, I was on fucking Queer Street. I didn't know if I was in the boardwalk, where the fuck I was. And he goes, and then Smoker, the ref comes over. He says, you all right, Mick? You all right? And I said, yeah. And he goes, then I got back in there and Arturo hit me with a 1-2, and he went boom, and he hit his hand, and it sounded like a fucking gunshot went off.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, holy shit. And he goes, and Matt, I don't know if it's possible, but I think he knocked my brain back in order, because then I wasn't as fucked up. Like, and he goes through this whole thing, but that's in my head. I'm watching the fight again in my head.
Yeah.
And that it was just like I would never have those opportunities.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. And now you gotta DM Wahlberg and tell him to talk about playing those guys, Well, that's what Entourage was. When I got these cameos on, I loved it because I idolized these guys, these actors, these athletes, they were people, Tom Brady and, LeBron, etc. That was a thrill for me. So I wasn't like, and I think that's, to me, why the show really works, because I was never, and again, I'm not dismissing myself. I've been very successful. Life is good, but I've never been that insider. I don't go hang out with these people either. And, I love Mark, but I don't spend a lot of time hanging out and partying with Mark either. So I appreciated when I got those people that I respect in all walks of life.
Yeah.
Fucking Dale Dye, who's, a decorated fucking whatever, a Marine, I think, who,
Yep.
does all the advising for movies and war things. When I get around people like this who are just great at what they do and passionate about what they do and leaders, I just get excited. So, that's fun also.
Well, there's an energy that comes from that. Like if you're in your business and being a creative person and being a director, you have to know people, you have to understand what motivates them, what gets them, if they're having a bad day, how to get them out of that bad day. You're kind of like a cop, for lack of a better word, right? You're a traffic guy that got to make sure that you're a detective, you're a homicide investigator, you're a forensic guy, you're a patrol cop, you're an undercover narcotics agent. You're trying to do everything at once to keep everybody together and moving in the same direction. So that's a leadership level type shit that most people wouldn't. They would look at your job and go, "Oh, he's a fucking director or writer or whatever." Who wouldn't want that job? Well, when you get into the nuts and bolts of it, it's a high stress, lots of moving parts. The ability to multitask has got to be off the charts. And then at the end, if it sucks, it's on you. And if it's great, it's on them. It's kind of like being the quarterback or of a football team. There's always someone else that did great when you do great, or if you suck, it's all on you. And that's got to be. I respect that, and I think what I'm excited about this conversation is that I know nothing about what you do, nothing. Right. And understanding the person that's doing, because I don't really need to know about directing a fucking movie or anything. I just need to know who is Doug Ellin, and I can already through my 30 years of doing this, I can tell that you have a calm and a confidence and a leadership quality that probably makes its way out to everyone else, so that they feel that on some level.
Hopefully, I mean, that's, definitely, like I said, when I do the podcast, I feel very in control. When I direct a scene, I feel very in control. The writing, which is where I really get paid, is where I feel out of control. It's where I feel like, how do I figure this roadmap at? And that's for me in this business is the most frustrating part of it. And, but yeah, there's definitely an aspect of that when you get on that set. And again, my sets were always not like crazy serious. Like you talk about, being a bodyguard, but everybody was boys and women on the set, from the cops who were protecting us to the crew guys. We were all friends. There was really, obviously people were making different money, but there was no like, okay, this, that, it was all just kind of a group working together for the same goal. And I think that's what made the show so special, is that, and why the podcast does that. We're bringing on people who worked in the cruise things behind the scenes to talk about their experiences, because we were all like a family. And I think those are the best jobs when you can get to that place,
But that doesn't just happen. Like, people don't understand. Like, when we were just talking off air about the administration and police department, how fucked up their hiring practices are these days. And it's not a byproduct of bad policing. It's a byproduct of the government forcing their hand into each little small community and dictating how policy should be across the board with this broad stroke, rather than allowing an individual location, a city or a larger township or borough, to sort of decide for themselves what is the best makeup for an officer in our department. And you don't have that when you broad stroke. And I think with what you're saying with the way that your set was, that's a direct result of hiring practices, right?
I mean, yeah, I think so. And I hope so. And, look, I mean, all of, again, like I said, I'm a big person about social inequity and solving that problem. Sadly, and hopefully I'm wrong. I mean, hopefully, I believed 20 years ago that we were going to get really colorblind eventually. I really did. Maybe I'm a fucking moron, because I didn't grow up giving a shit if you were Black, Latin, and now, and as a Jew, I dealt with some shit. I got to New Orleans, and fucking first day, some guy called me a Jew. I almost thought he was joking. I was like, it's fucking 1990. Are you out of your fucking mind? So I grew up in a town where, even with the Italians and Irish, I didn't deal with a lot of that type of shit. If we fought, we fought. It wasn't like because of that. But now, I guess what I'm saying is, while something needs to be done to make sure hiring practices are fair. Just like in the NFL, we go, how can, half the NFL be black and none of the coaches be black? So something has to be done. I just don't have the answers because I feel like things are getting more segregated now than they ever were. And I feel like every fucking conversation is about, skin color and this and that. So I'm an idealist and I hope somehow it gets better. That being said, I hope that people, do take it on themselves to go, how can I do things better? And these are causes that have been important to me. That the poster that's hanging behind me is when the Garden was Eden, which was a 30 for 30 on the Knicks. I did 69-72 Knicks, which was really about sports. And it's a great book that we based the movie on, but it was really about the first black and white team coming together in the NBA while the Boston Celtics were this white team and the city was not embracing them. So those things have been important to me for a long time. It's just, and maybe hopefully these steps will move us closer to what I'm saying, but I don't really, I just can't, it's just sad that it feels like things are getting even more segregated right now, but I'm hoping that's just a step to getting everything closer together, but I don't know.
Well, I think, and we'll pivot, but I think the key to it all is I think we're being some trickeries going on into pointing us at each other. And I'll give you an example. When in law enforcement, the chiefs in local areas and suburbs and even in the city, they'll go to the FBI Academy. It's like a big thing for cops to go to the FBI Academy and go through that process, like a leadership thing. You got to be a certain rank and whatever. And the running joke amongst the working class cops is they're going to get a chip in their neck because they always come back fucked up. Like their bearings change.
Yeah.
And because they get taught this, keep them fighting each other so they're not attacking you.
Right.
And that's the global governmental plan, is to keep the masses attacking each other so they're not redirecting their attention at us. And if we would all just go, hold on a second, we're just microcosmically different fucked. Right? When you look at it, you have the 1%, and the rest of us are just fighting over decimal points. We're basically all fucked, just at different levels of fucked. And if we would just go, that still sucks. No matter if I'm a 10th higher fucked than you or less, it really doesn't matter. We're still fucked. Yeah. And redirect our focus to the people that are creating the fucking, then I think we would have a whole lot better chance to fix the problem.
I don't know. It's such a complicated system because I know, look, there are politicians I do believe that want to do good. They believe they're doing good for whatever side they're on. But then there's just like with bad cops, there are power hungry people in every fucking business and every walk of life. That is humanity. Yep. And, we're supposed to have checks in the system that can stop that, which is why, and again, not right or left. Yep. I mean, I wasn't even necessarily against the Republicans winning this election, but I fucking hate Trump. Everything about him as a human being is despicable to me. And that's not to, I don't want to go into, well, there's people on the other side too, because there are plenty of people. I can't stand Cuomo either. So, but I think just normal people have to take, like you said earlier, an empathetic look. That's the lens that everything should be looked through. Is there something I can do that might help somebody else? And what position am I in that can maybe do that for somebody else? Those are the ways everybody has to look. And I know at the same time, a lot of people are just trying to fucking keep their families fed and clothed and everything else. So it's a fucked up system. But what I watched, on the 6th, which I really was watching it going, holy shit, this is The Handmaid's Tale. I just watched this. They could literally take over the Capitol right now. Trump could get on television and go, I'm overturning this election. Again, whatever you believe, but the election, the one before was just as close as this one. And they could have fought and they could have gone and said, we're overturning this. We were robbed. And of course, there's always going to be improprieties and there's always going to be people trying to switch laws that add voters, take away voters, this and that. But at the end of the day, that was what happened. We got to all come back and go, how do we improve it the next time? If I want these people out of office, how do I get out there and go, I'm going to vote. I'm going to talk. I'm going to get my friends understanding the issues that I feel are important. So, but anyway, I don't have the answers, but I just think
it's such a fucked up situation that sadly I just don't think there's enough people that are willing to do, because that takes to be empathetic takes an inward approach first.
yeah.
You have to sort of know yourself and know where your pain points are and
Yep.
understand how you would want somebody to help you in certain things. I think you have to be able to go inward to come outward. So,
Yep.
um,
And also, listen, you have to have the time. It's like I say, you
oh
know,
yeah, well, you can't
like
create time.
there's some people who are fucking struggling just to get by, and it doesn't mean they're not empathetic people, and they have it, but they don't necessarily have the time to go, how am I going to take action and go do something? So it is important for people who are in successful positions to do their best to lead from empathetic situations and to try to do their best. And again, this is like, I mean, you know, it's probably the most political discussion I've had, and I don't have the answers. Like, I'm all for paying more taxes if it really does help more people. But then when you go to the other argument that, well, the government just fucking wastes all the money anyway, and it doesn't help anybody, and they steal it and they do this, and then you watch one after the other of these fucking politicians on both sides. Cuomo's writing books about how he's a hero in the pandemic when it's not even half over. This fucking Gates guy is I mean, I don't know what the exact details are on, but they're just one after the other. And I think the sad part is that politics in general, especially now, when you know, it used to be public service. You don't get paid, you don't do this, and you don't do that. Now, you know, if you make it as a politician, you're rich, and your kids are rich, and you're done. And you're going to be, if you're going to be president of the United States, that's worth $100 million to the future of your family. And that's a different mindset than I'm going to make X amount of dollars and really work to help people. So I don't know how you fix any of it, but
it's got, I think part of it needs to be, and it's such, I mean, I love these kind of conversations, first of all, because even though we're on different sides of the political spectrum on a lot of things, I love having insightful conversations with intellectual people who have passion about what they're talking about. So I love this. I can do this.
Yeah, but by the way, I don't even know what side we're on, because I don't have a side. I have a side of what's reasonable and what's right. And I'm also smart enough that I don't know. I don't know whether raising taxes on the rich is going to help or not, because I see the, you know, allegedly smart economics people who go, well, that hurts business and this and that. So, but all I can say is I am willing to pay more money to help other people. I'm willing to do that. I'm not willing to give it to, you know, Cuomo so he can try to fucking harass everyone in his office, you know, that, you know, and act like the Godfather, you know?
Yep. And that's what it, unfortunately, it feels like. It feels like everybody, no matter what side, and listen, I'm a firm believer, 85% of everybody that's elected into office after 2 re-elections becomes the enemy. It's that's my general overall theory, is they become the enemy, because then big business and lobbyists and everyone else gets involved, and now you're no longer making decisions for yourself. You're doing it with an agenda. When you decided to do podcasts, you were convinced by, was it Connolly or?
Yeah, Connolly.
Okay. And you finally got in. You're like what, 7, 8? How many podcasts are you in now? How many
55.
episodes? 55.
Yeah.
Wow. I must be. I'm way behind then.
And we just crossed. I mean, you know, like I said, our first episode did less than 3,000 downloads. We just crossed 3 million downloads. So with no advertising and no anything except our Instagram, pushing the word out. So it's just been spreading, which is really the most rewarding part, you know?
I think when people watch my podcast, whatever, not merely what's watching yours, but they always say they enjoy the naturalness of a conversation. Like I always, when I created I went on a bunch of podcasts before I created mine, because I wanted to know the different styles and where I felt comfortable with a host and whatever. Did you guys decide on a style? Did you wing it? Because my show's a wing it. Other than one question,
we winged it and are winging it every day. I got one in an hour. I have no idea what we're talking about. Kevin Dillon's in Georgia doing a movie, so we don't even know if he's calling in. So yeah, we wing it. I would like to, now that it's actually starting to pay off for us, I would like to get it a little more organized and have a little bit more planned. But as soon as we get off here, I'm going to start thinking about what we're even going to talk about today. So I have no idea what we're going to do.
And I like that. I mean, I don't have as much, I don't want to say pressure, but this is a hobby, right? This is just something I do. I don't get paid for
Yeah.
this. This is just something I enjoy doing as a passion. And I love the fact that I get to, it's hard not to know who you are, but I don't know a whole lot about your life. I didn't know you were from New
Yeah.
York. I knew that you Entourage and that you're dating a blonde and that you just had a birthday. You're having a birthday, and that's about all I knew. So
Yeah.
and I love learning. I love experiencing another person's passion and watching just from conversation things come out that I would have never in a bazillion years. If somebody said, "Are you going to talk about politics in your conversation with Doug Ellin today?" Like,
Yeah, I
fuck
wasn't
no,
planning.
not having that conversation. But we did, and I love that.
Hopefully I didn't say anything to get me in trouble. I'm for everybody. I really am. I really am.
I think this was a very honest and authentic conversation that
Good.
just sort of, if we were sitting at a bar, I'd probably be 4 scotches deep.
Right.
But that makes it even more fun.
Very
Listen,
good.
first of all, I just want to say thank you. I know your time is valuable. I know that you probably get bombarded with DMs, and
A little bit.
when I sent it for everybody, a little trick of the trade. And this has worked many times. I have 3. I send one.
Don't tell anybody this. The only
no,
reason
then they'll fucking do it. I will do it. I'll keep
the only reason, honestly, every once in a while I just hit somebody, they say something, and I go, yeah, what the fuck? But Colin, you know what? Like I said, I love athletes, and Colin likes to downplay, like, oh, I'm mediocre, I'm this and that, which is a fucking joke. Like, we all wish to God that we had a chance to play professional sports. It's like, and every single guy who's ever walked on a field, a court, on the ice, I respect, because I know what it took to get there.
Oh, yeah.
And so Colin, when Colin said he's a friend of yours, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. But yeah, I get hit with a lot of DMs, and that's not to say people shouldn't do it. Because, by the way, I swear to God, I'm in the same spot. We're sitting here with a podcast in 2 hours. I have 4. I don't have a producer doing this podcast. Right. I'm doing it myself. I have 4 DMs into people that used to be friends of mine, but I have lost touch with them. So I have to reach out on Instagram, who are on the fucking show, and I can't even find them. So I'm searching for a guest for today. And it is
nobody would know that. Nobody would know that.
It is the way it is. And I think that's the fun of this. I have said it a lot. If I was 21 years old and was able to meet or communicate in any way with some of the heroes that I had back in the day, it's amazing. And anyone who is creative, now is the time to go out and do something. It's inexpensive. You could do it at your house, like we are both in our house right now. And there's really no excuses. When I came up, that short film I talked about earlier, I had to beg, borrow, and steal. It took me a year to make, and then I had to fucking beg people to watch it. Now it's like I could have done the exact same thing in 24 hours on an iPhone and had it on Instagram the next day. And, if I could reach out to somebody and get their attention to it, your whole life can change like that. But even not on that grand scale, the idea of kind of getting a skill, which I think this helps with everything, getting to be able to have conversations where you actually listen to people and not talk over them, which is, what I find in life. Usually you get into a room, there's always 1 or 2 jerk-offs who will not shut the fuck up, So this works well because they know when you're talking, they'll actually listen. And, that's what's great. I'm going to have some great comedians. Like I said, Jeff Ross is coming on next week, Jeff Garland. So those things excite the shit out of me because they did, both of them successful comedians. They did what I kind of bailed on early, what I didn't have the balls to keep going through. They did, and it worked to the max. So it's going to be fun.
Well, I appreciate you, brother. Hang tight 1 second. We'll talk off the air. I just want to close out the show. First of all, thank you to Doug Ellin. Everybody, go to Victory, the podcast. Subscribe, download. Go watch 55 episodes. I'm only in episode 8, but I thought there was only 8. So I'm a fucking putz. But I'm telling you right now, go to the podcast. If you get a chance, subscribe, download, do everything, become a fan, follow them on Instagram. I'm thankful to have the ability to have these conversations with people that I otherwise wouldn't speak to. And I hope you enjoyed this episode, just as I hope you enjoy every one of the episodes of the 2 Dates in the Dash podcast. Everybody, thank you very much. Once again, go to mattkubler.com to learn more about me and my book. And make sure you hit that download, subscribe, and Make sure you share the love. All right, everybody. God bless. Take care. Go out and be kind to one another.